If you don't follow these basics, then any of the fancy stuff's not going to work.
Hey B2B sellers, welcome back again to this next Talking Sales series with Steve Hall. Welcome back, Steve.
Good day, John.
Last time we talked about the fact we're going to do a series of interviews with Steve around prospecting, around lead generation, getting your ideal customer out there to talk with you. So I'm looking forward to doing that, Steve. But I thought first off, we might just get down to the basics. Now, what we'll probably hear here is things that people are familiar with, but let's refresh everybody's mind on the basics of prospecting.
That's a great idea, John. I think there's a lot of high-level tools out there that people are using. There's a lot of fancy theories, which are really great, but if you don't know the basics... Have you ever been to the Picasso Museum in Paris?
No, I haven't. Tell me about it.
Well, basically, Picasso left thousands of paintings to the French state because he owed a heap of tax, and that's the way he paid it when he died.
Okay.
And so there's all these pictures, and you can see some of his really crazy stuff with women with cut open and strange nudes and stuff you would never recognise. And he was a master at inventing new genres of art.
Right.
But his early stuff, he was just a brilliant draftsman, because until you know the rules, you can't break them. So you really need to. So if you don't follow these basics, then any of the fancy stuff's not going to work.
So you're going to go through the very basics, which some of us need reminding of, me particularly.
Well, let's face it, there are always new salespeople coming along who just don't know this stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And then a lot of I've come across some very experienced salespeople that might know it, but they don't do it. So some of the very basic stuff is, first of all, targeting. Who are the companies? What is your territory? What are the companies you're targeting? Who needs what you have to sell? And I'm looking at targeting from a perspective of the size, the industry, the geography, the different characteristics that make up your prospecting base, your target market. But more than that, who specifically are the companies? What are the list of your top 50, 100, 300 companies that you're targeting? And
part of that is just identifying who your ideal client is. And going out and saying, these are my ideal clients. Is that right?
That's right. And you'd think that is bleeding obvious, to quote John Cleese, but 3 years ago, I worked with one of the three largest software companies in the world on helping them get some meetings, and they decided they wanted to do some targeted marketing to a niche audience of financial services in Australia. I said, great, okay, give me your list. And they said, oh, we don't have a list. And I said, what, you mean you don't know which companies you want to target? And they said, no, but we'll get a list from Hoover's. And I said, okay, great. What? Hoover's the American company that knows all about America, but not that much about Australia. And they said, oh. And they just literally didn't know which companies they wanted to target. So I ended up getting a list for them. I found there's not that many banks, insurance companies, credit unions, health funds in Australia. It was easy to get, but they didn't have that. Mm-hmm. And the next question I asked them, which comes to the next thing, is who do you want to target? Which particular individuals in those companies?
The title of the person, like CEO and CFO, or even a digital marketing person or whatever, right? You need to know who the target is inside an organisation.
Exactly, and don't forget, different people have different titles. So you might say, oh, I want the head of sales and marketing. Banks, for instance, probably don't have that title. So you've got to look at the individuals that you want. So if you're going to target specific people, because at the end of the day, all sales comes down to one individual talking to one or more other individuals.
Sure.
Pardon me. So you need to know who they are.
Absolutely, understand that.
And I mean, that's really basic. But if you want to use digital marketing or a telephone call or LinkedIn or whatever it may be that you're going to use to get to a person, the first thing you need to know is who that person is. Sounds obvious, I know, but you'd be amazed.
Okay, next.
Okay, well, the next question is, what do they care about? Now, just supposing you're selling to a large bank, mm-hmm. right? What the CEO cares about, what the CIO cares about, what the head of sales and marketing care about are going to be different variations of the same thing.
You know, Steve, there's a lot of argument and discussion out there about cold calling is dead, or a lot of people saying cold calling is living forever. All of this is still important if you're going to do a cold call. It's ridiculous doing a cold call if you haven't identified the target organisation, the individual, and what that individual cares about.
That's right. I mean, if you're the CEO, you're going to care about the reputation of the company. You're going to care about profitability. You're going to care about long-term sustainability, perhaps.
And probably in this day of cyber security, security and so on.
Well, certainly minimising risk of all kinds
Yes.
is a key thing for the CEO. Whereas the head of sales and marketing is possibly less concerned about risk and more concerned about new customers. So
Sure.
you've got to craft your message depending upon who you're talking to and what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, good point.
Yeah.
And next?
Well, the next question is, if you're going to go to someone and you're for the first time, they're not an existing customer, what are you trying to achieve? Now, obviously, long term, you want to sell them some stuff, but what are you trying to achieve in that first communication? Whether it be an email, whether it be, say, going through LinkedIn, whether it be a telephone call, whether you're going to send them a parcel, whatever it might be, what are you trying to achieve?
Okay, that's really important. I want to go step back one. You said, what do they care about? Obviously, in between there, therefore, you need to craft a message.
Yes, you need to craft a message, but your message is going to depend upon what you're trying to achieve.
Okay. All right, so you're saying that you identify what they care about,
Yeah.
and before you craft your message, you make sure you understand what you're trying to achieve.
Absolutely.
And you put those two together and you craft a message out of that.
Exactly.
Okay.
And not all the time, but most of the time, you're trying to achieve a meeting where you have enough time to understand what they really care about and to get your value proposition across in terms of what they care about.
Okay.
And that's challenging to do in a one-page email or a 30-second telephone call or a letter, because we jump to conclusions. In the recent presidential debates, Hillary Clinton, I know she lost, but Hillary Clinton said words matter. And words do matter. Words matter a lot. And because there's so much stuff going on, we all use shortcuts. So a particular word will immediately, if you speak to someone and use a particular word, they will immediately think of it in relationship to what they know.
Into their context, based on their context.
Into their context. So if you call up I had a client not recently who helped retailers minimise losses. And one of their challenges was that immediately they talk to a retailer, the word loss conjures up a particular set of things that they know about.
And that can vary from one person to another person in that retailing organisation.
Well, no, in that particular case, retailers tend to think of losses as stock shrinkage, and and therefore their automatic reaction was, "Oh, we've got those under control because we do something about it." But in fact, what they were talking about was much broader than that.
Okay.
It was about theft. It was about shrinkage. It was about a whole heap of. It was about lack of training. It was about incorrect pricing. There's a whole heap of things that they covered under that great heading of loss. But they came to me to help them craft a message, and we had to craft a message that stop people hearing it jumping to the incorrect conclusion.
Great point. And I've seen that happen too often. We come into an organisation, hey, I'm going to sell to you, craft my message around our unique value proposition, and I present it, and their reaction is totally different to what I expected. They're thinking about something totally different. So that's what you're talking about. Get in the mind of the customer. Make sure the words you use are expressed as a message that they understand in their context.
Well, yes, and when we're talking about crafting messages, you want to give them as little as possible in order to achieve your objective.
Yeah, the last thing they're going to listen to is a whole lot of content on a telephone or
the more you tell them, the more chance there is of jumping to the incorrect conclusion. Because you can never tell them enough to fully explain what you have.
Okay, great point. So the message needs to be short, succinct, written from their point of view, from their context, so that they immediately, based on a very small number of words, jump to the right conclusion.
That's right. Let me give you an example. I think I've used this before, but for one client, we talked to retailers. We thought about what retailers cared about, which was in those days, probably still is, was online competition, competition from internet companies.
Right.
And the message was very simple. We want to talk to you for half an hour to talk about helping you compete better with online retailers. Didn't give them too much. Didn't let them jump to conclusions. Told them what we wanted. Short, sharp, easy.
And back then, if they didn't have an online retailing capacity, immediately their mind's going to jump.
Well, even if they did, they were still looking at ways to help with that.
Yeah. So you make sure, based on, I guess, the research you did, that those words would draw up the right perception from the customer as to what you were talking about.
But not too much.
Right.
Because if you then said, and the way we do this is through blah, 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 then they'd think, oh, we've got one of those, or we're already doing that, or whatever.
Okay.
What you want to do is you want to generate curiosity. You want to make them think, maybe I should speak to these people because they might just be able to help me.
Okay. Look, I think that's great. Is that the last of them?
That's the last of them.
So let's just summarise those, and we'll come back and talk about each of those in more detail in separate discussions. So quickly, run through them quickly.
Which companies are you targeting specifically?
Mm-hmm.
Names. Which people are you targeting? Roles and names. What do they care about?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get the message to them? Which we didn't really cover, but we will.
Mm-hmm.
And what is the specific message depending upon what you're trying to achieve?
Really look forward to having you come back again in 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll cover each one of those one after the other over the next 5 months or so.
Look forward to it, John.